The fateful encounter. The storm raged across the barren landscape of planet Xrf, lightning crackling in the dark skies as acid rain pelted the rocky terrain. Alex Harper adjusted his oxygen mask and scanned the horizon with his visor. He had landed on this desolate world to collect rare minerals for his employer. A dangerous job, but it paid well. Little did he know, this trip would change his life forever. As Alex climbed over a jagged ridge, his scanner beeped unexpectedly. The screen displayed an anomaly, a faint energy reading just a few hundred meters away. It wasn't mineral-related. His curiosity piqued. Alex moved cautiously toward the signal, his boots crunching on the sharp rocks below. Through the swirling fog, Alex spotted the source, a crashed alien spacecraft. The vessel was sleek and unfamiliar, with glowing blue etchings running along its fractured hull. Sparks flew from the wreckage, and smoke billowed into the air. Alex hesitated. Whoever or whatever was inside might not be friendly. But then he heard it, a faint, desperate cry. It was weak, barely audible over the storm, but it was there. A voice. Someone was alive. Alex sprinted toward the wreckage, his instincts overriding his caution. As he neared, he found the cockpit smashed open, exposing the interior. Inside, slumped against a cracked console, was an alien girl. Her skin shimmered a pale lavender, and her hair glowed faintly like starlight. Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked at him with a mix of fear and desperation. "Help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Alex's heart raced. She was injured, badly. Her left arm was twisted at an unnatural angle, and dark blood seeped from a wound on her side. Her breathing was shallow, her chest rising and falling unevenly. "Hold on," Alex said, his voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "I'm going to get you out of here." The alien girl winced, her gaze flickering toward the sky. Alex followed her gaze and spotted something in the distance. Lights. Red, ominous lights cutting through the storm clouds. They were moving toward them. Whoever had caused this crash was coming back to finish the job. Alex wasted no time. He climbed into the wreckage and carefully pulled the girl into his arms. She let out a small gasp of pain but didn't resist. Her body felt impossibly light, as if gravity barely affected her. "Stay with me," Alex said as he carried her out of the wreckage. The storm was getting worse, and the acidic rain sizzled against his protective gear. His visor displayed a warning about his suit's integrity. He didn't have long before it started to fail. The red lights were getting closer. Alex could hear the faint hum of engines now. Whoever was piloting those ships wasn't here to rescue anyone. He pushed forward, scanning for shelter. His eyes landed on a rocky outcrop, a shallow cave barely big enough for two people. It would have to do. With every ounce of strength, Alex sprinted toward the cave, the alien girl clinging weakly to him. The engines grew louder, and he could feel the ground vibrating beneath his feet. A single glance over his shoulder confirmed his fears. 3 drones were descending rapidly, their sleek, insect-like forms illuminated by crimson lights. Alex dove into the cave just as a bolt of energy seared the ground where he'd been standing. He landed hard, shielding the girl with his body. The drones hovered outside the cave, scanning the area with cold precision. The girl stirred in his arms, her eyes half closed. "They won't stop. Until I'm dead," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "Not today," Alex replied, determination flaring in his chest. He set her down gently against the cave wall and reached for his sidearm, a compact laser pistol. It wasn't much against drones, but it was all he had. The first drone edged closer, its weapon systems glowing ominously. Alex steadied his aim and fired, the laser bolt striking the drone's sensor array. It let out a high-pitched screech and spiraled into the ground, exploding on impact. The other 2 drones hesitated, their movements erratic. Alex took the opportunity to fire again, but the second drone dodged, returning fire with a searing bolt that grazed his shoulder. He gritted his teeth against the pain and fired again, this time hitting its propulsion unit. The drone crashed, sparks flying. The third drone retreated, its sensor lights blinking rapidly. Alex knew it wasn't over. It was likely calling for reinforcements. He turned back to the girl, who was watching him with a mix of awe and exhaustion. "You're safe for now," he said, kneeling beside her. Her lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes were glassy with pain. "Human. Brave," she whispered before losing consciousness. Alex stared at her, the weight of the situation sinking in. He had saved her life, but at what cost? Whoever was hunting her wouldn't stop, and now he was a target too. As the storm raged outside, Alex resolved to protect her, no matter the danger. Little did he know, this act of kindness would entangle him in a tradition he could never have imagined. The struggle for survival. The howling wind outside the cave was relentless, carrying the acidic rain that sizzled ominously against the rocky walls. Inside the shallow shelter, Alex worked quickly, his hands steady despite the chaos outside. The alien girl, Lyraya, lay unconscious against the jagged cave wall, her pale lavender skin bruised and her breathing labored. Her shimmering hair had dimmed, like a fading star, and the gash on her side was worse than he had initially thought. Alex rummaged through his survival kit, pulling out a med-gel injector. He hesitated for a moment, staring at the alien physiology before him. Would human medicine even work on her? There was no time to dwell on the uncertainty. He pressed the injector against her wound, releasing a translucent gel that hissed as it sealed the injury. She flinched slightly, her head tilting toward him, but she didn't wake. "Hang in there," Alex muttered under his breath. His voice echoed softly in the confined space, the only sound other than the distant hum of enemy drones. Outside, the storm began to calm, but Alex knew the danger wasn't over. The last drone had escaped, and reinforcements were likely on their way. He activated his scanner, checking for any signs of pursuit. The device beeped faintly, showing several approaching signals. His heart sank. They had no more than 20 minutes before the enemy reached their location. Alex turned his attention back to Lyraya. She stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering open. Her gaze met his, filled with confusion and lingering fear. "You're awake," Alex said softly, kneeling beside her. "How do you feel?" Lyraya blinked, her eyes focusing on him. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. She struggled to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her side. "Stay still," Alex said, placing a hand on her shoulder to steady her. "You're hurt. I patched you up, but you need rest." Lyraya shook her head weakly. "They are coming," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You should leave." Alex scoffed, leaning back. "Yeah, not happening. I didn't carry you out of that wreckage just to abandon you now." Lyraya's gaze softened, though her expression remained wary. "Human, you risked too much." "Story of my life," Alex replied, forcing a smirk to hide his own rising anxiety. "Now, can you tell me why they're after you? Maybe I can help." For a moment, she hesitated, her glowing eyes searching his face as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, she sighed, her voice faint but clear. "I carry something they want. A core from my ship. It's powerful, dangerous." Alex frowned. "Where is it?" She lifted a trembling hand and tapped the small pendant around her neck. It was barely larger than a pebble, but it pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. "They will not stop until they have it," she continued. "You should not be involved." "Well, it's a bit late for that," Alex said, running a hand through his hair. "We need to move. They're closing in, and this cave won't keep us hidden for long." Lyraya's eyes widened slightly. "Move? But I cannot walk." "Then I'll carry you," Alex said, his tone firm. He began packing his gear, securing everything into his utility pack. "We're heading to higher ground. Maybe I can find a way to signal my ship." "You?" Lyraya started, her voice faltering. "You do not have to do this." Alex paused, glancing at her. "Yeah, I do. You're not dying on my watch." Her lips parted, as if to protest, but no words came. Instead, she nodded weakly, her expression unreadable. Alex lifted her carefully, cradling her light frame as he stepped out of the cave. The storm had eased, but the landscape was still treacherous. Sharp rocks jutted out of the ground, and pools of acidic water dotted the terrain. Above them, the sky remained dark, and the faint hum of enemy drones grew louder. The climb was grueling. Alex's muscles burned with the effort of carrying Lariah while navigating the uneven terrain. Every step felt heavier, but he pushed forward, driven by a sense of duty he couldn't quite explain. Lariah remained silent, her head resting against his chest, her breathing shallow but steady. As they reached a ridge, Alex spotted a cluster of jagged rocks forming a natural archway, a potential choke point. If they were attacked, it could give him an advantage. He set Lariah down gently beneath the arch and scanned the horizon. The drones were closer now, their lights piercing the gloom. "I'll hold them off," Alex said, pulling his laser pistol from its holster. "You stay here and don't move." Lariah's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. "You cannot fight them alone." "Watch me," Alex replied with a grin, though his heart pounded in his chest. As the first drone appeared over the ridge, Alex took aim and fired. The bolt struck its sensor array, sending it spiraling out of control. Two more drones followed, their weapons glowing ominously. Alex ducked behind the rocks as energy bolts scorched the ground around him. From behind, Lariah's voice rang out, weak but defiant. "Human, take this." Alex turned to see her holding the pendant, its glow intensifying. He hesitated, unsure of what she intended. "It will protect you," she said, "but only if you trust me." With no time to argue, Alex grabbed the pendant and placed it around his neck. Instantly, a surge of energy coursed through him, his vision sharpening and his movements feeling lighter. He turned back to face the drones, a newfound determination burning within him. This fight wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting Lariah and uncovering the secrets that had brought them together. And Alex wasn't about to back down. Unlikely companionship. The morning on planet Exarath was anything but peaceful. The sky was a swirling mix of orange and gray, with the distant echoes of alien drones fading into the horizon. Alex, Harper, and Lariah had survived the night, but their journey was far from over. The air was thick with tension as they set out, their uneasy partnership forged by necessity rather than trust. Alex adjusted his utility pack, his eyes scanning the rugged terrain ahead. The rocky landscape stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged cliffs and steaming fissures that released toxic vapors. He glanced over his shoulder at Lariah, who stumbled slightly, her weakened body struggling to keep pace. "You're not going to make it far like this," Alex said, stopping to help her. He crouched slightly, gesturing for her to climb onto his back. "Come on, I'll carry you." Lariah hesitated, her luminous eyes narrowing. "Your kind, always so willing to help. Why?" Alex shrugged, a faint smirk on his face. "Call it stubbornness. Or maybe I just hate leaving people behind. Either way, hop on." Reluctantly, Lariah climbed onto his back, her delicate frame barely weighing more than his pack. "Humans, strange creatures," she murmured, resting her head against his shoulder. "You've got no idea," Alex replied, his tone light despite the dire situation. "Hold on tight." As Alex trudged forward, the silence between them was broken only by the crunch of his boots against the gravel and the occasional hiss of steam escaping the ground. But eventually, Lariah spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "My people, we do not trust easily, yet you saved me." Alex glanced at her over his shoulder. "Yeah, well, trust isn't exactly a human specialty either. But out here, survival comes first. Besides," he added with a grin, You're not so bad, for someone whose kind might have tried to kill me on sight. Lariah tilted her head, studying him. You joke, yet you face death for me. This is not logical. Welcome to being human, Alex said. Logic doesn't always win. They reached a plateau that offered a brief respite. Alex set Lariah down gently and began scanning the area. The view was grim, a maze of jagged rocks and crevices stretching in every direction. To the north, faint smoke plumes marked an active volcanic field. To the south, the glow of red lights hinted at the drone's continued search. Lariah sat quietly, her eyes following Alex's every move. Finally, she broke the silence. Your planet, Earth, what is it like? Alex paused, his expression softening. Earth, it's complicated. Beautiful, but not perfect. Oceans, forests, mountains, it's got a bit of everything. The people, well, we're just as mixed. Some good, some not so much. Lariah seemed to ponder his words. Your oceans, I have only seen them in archives. Vast and alive. Nothing like this place. Alex chuckled. Yeah, Xerath doesn't exactly scream vacation destination. But it's got its charm, I guess, if you're into toxic fumes and killer drones. Lariah's lips twitched into what could almost be called a smile. You speak as if danger amuses you. Not exactly, Alex said, sitting down beside her. But when you live on the edge, you either laugh about it or go crazy. Their conversation was cut short by a sudden tremor beneath their feet. The ground shook violently, and cracks began forming along the plateau. Alex grabbed Lariah, pulling her to safety as a section of the ledge crumbled into the abyss below. That was too close, Alex muttered, helping Lariah steady herself. We need to keep moving. As they pressed on, their bond began to grow in subtle ways. Lariah, despite her weakened state, pointed out natural hazards Alex would have missed: hidden sinkholes, unstable rocks, and even a predatory creature lurking in the shadows. In turn, Alex shared his survival tactics, teaching her how to navigate the treacherous terrain and ration their limited supplies. At one point, they stumbled upon a cluster of bioluminescent plants glowing faintly in the dim light. Lariah paused, her eyes widening in recognition. These are healing flora. My people use them for injuries. Perfect, Alex said, carefully collecting the plants. Looks like we just found your first aid kit. As he applied the crushed plant paste to her wound, Lariah winced but said nothing. When he finished, she looked at him, her expression unreadable. You could have left me behind. Many times. Alex met her gaze. Yeah, but I didn't. And I won't. So stop expecting me to. For the first time, Lariah's stern demeanor softened. Humans are not as primitive as the galaxy believes. Thanks, I think, Alex said with a chuckle. Their growing companionship was put to the test when they reached a narrow canyon. The only path forward was blocked by a fallen boulder too large to climb. As Alex assessed the situation, the faint hum of drones grew louder. We don't have time for this, Alex muttered. He began searching for an alternative route, but found none. The only way out was through. Lariah suddenly stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly. She placed them against the boulder, her eyes narrowing in concentration. The rock began to vibrate, shifting ever so slightly. What are you doing? Alex asked, alarmed. My core, its energy can move this, she said through gritted teeth, but it will drain me further. Alex started, but it was too late. The boulder shifted enough to create a gap, and Lariah collapsed, her energy spent. Alex caught her before she hit the ground. You really need to stop doing that, he said, his voice tinged with worry. She looked up at him weakly. Survival is illogical without sacrifice. Well, consider me the illogical one, Alex said, lifting her again. Because I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself. As the hum of drones grew dangerously close, Alex carried her through the gap, their unlikely partnership solidifying with every step into the unknown. The tradition revealed. The sky was painted in hues of deep orange as the sun of Exarath dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. Alex and Lariah had finally reached a sheltered valley surrounded by towering cliffs. Exhausted, Alex set her down on a flat rock, his arms aching from hours of carrying her through treacherous terrain. "You okay?" Alex asked, kneeling beside her and pulling out his canteen. Lariah nodded weakly, taking a small sip of the water he offered. Her shimmering eyes met his, and for the first time, there was something more than gratitude in her gaze. There was hesitation, as though she were about to say something important. "You've been quiet since we left the canyon," Alex noted, leaning back against the rock. "What's on your mind?" Lariah hesitated, her fingers tracing the edges of the glowing pendant around her neck. The same pendant she had revealed earlier to hold the core that her pursuers so desperately sought. Its faint pulse seemed to match her heartbeat, steady but fragile. "There is something I must tell you," she began, her voice soft but steady. "Something you deserve to know." Alex raised an eyebrow, intrigued but wary. "Go on." Lariah took a deep breath, her expression hardening with resolve. "In saving my life, you have done more than you realize. Among my people, such an act, it carries great meaning. It is not something done lightly, nor without consequence." Alex frowned. "I didn't do it for consequences, Lariah. I did it because you needed help." She shook her head. "That is precisely why it matters. Among my people, to save a life, especially one so close to death, is to forge a bond stronger than any other. It is sacred." Alex's confusion deepened. "Sacred? What kind of bond are we talking about?" Lariah hesitated again, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "It is a bond of life and honor. To save me means you are bound to me, as my chosen partner." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Alex blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Wait, partner. Are you saying—" "Yes," Lariah interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "Among my people, it is known as the life debt. In saving me, you have claimed responsibility for my well-being. It is equivalent to what you humans call marriage." Alex stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Of all the things he had expected her to say, this was not on the list. "Marriage? You're joking, right?" Lariah shook her head solemnly. "I assure you, I am not. This is a tradition that has been followed for generations. To ignore it would bring great dishonor, not only to me, but to you as well." Alex let out a short, incredulous laugh. "I think I missed the part where I signed up for an intergalactic wedding." Lariah's expression remained serious. "You may find it humorous, but I do not. This is not a matter of choice. It is a matter of tradition." Running a hand through his hair, Alex paced in front of her. "Okay, hold on. Let's break this down. You're telling me that because I saved you, I'm— what? Your husband now?" "By my people's laws, yes," Lariah replied simply. Alex stopped pacing, his face a mix of disbelief and exasperation. "That's insane. We barely know each other. And what about, asking if I'm okay with this?" Lariah tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. "You saved me. That is all that matters. Consent is implicit in the act of rescue." Alex pinched the bridge of his nose. "Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be?" Silence stretched between them, the weight of her revelation settling heavily. Alex sat down beside her, still trying to process what he just learned. "So what happens now? Do we have some kind of alien ceremony? Do I get a say in any of this?" Lariah's lips curved into a faint smile. "The ceremony is only a formality. The bond is already made. However, my people will expect you to honor it." "And if I don't?" Alex asked cautiously. Her smile faded. "You will be seen as an oathbreaker, a dishonorable outcast. Among my kind, such a title is worse than death. Alex let out a frustrated sigh, leaning his head back against the rock. Great, so either I go along with this, or I ruin both our lives. It is not as dire as you think, Larea said gently. Our bond is not just an obligation. It is a partnership, a connection that can bring strength and purpose. Alex turned to her, his expression softening. You really believe that, don't you? She nodded. I do. And I believe you are capable of great things. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distant hum of drones was gone, and the valley was eerily quiet. Alex studied Larea, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos they had endured. Despite everything, she seemed at peace with the situation. I don't know if I'm cut out for this, Alex admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But I'll try. For now, let's focus on keeping both of us alive. Larea smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. That is all I ask. As the stars began to appear overhead, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his life had taken a turn he could never have anticipated. Yet, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he felt a strange sense of purpose, a bond, as Larea had said, one that he couldn't ignore. Meeting the alien delegation, the stillness of the valley didn't last long. As the first rays of Exarath's morning sun broke through the heavy clouds, a low hum reverberated across the landscape. Alex instinctively stood, his hand hovering over his laser pistol. The sound grew louder, unmistakable. Ships were descending toward their location. Larea, Alex called, glancing at her resting figure. We've got company. She stirred, blinking groggily, but the moment she heard the sound, her glowing eyes widened. It is them, she said, her voice heavy with resignation. Your people? Alex asked, his tone cautious. She nodded slowly. Yes, and they will not be pleased. Before Alex could ask what she meant, 3 sleek alien ships appeared over the cliffs, their matte black hulls glinting faintly in the sunlight. They landed with precision, their landing gear barely disturbing the rocky ground. The ships hissed as their doors opened, and a group of imposing figures stepped out. Larea's people were taller than Alex had expected, their lavender skin and glowing hair similar to hers but more intense. Each figure was clad in ornate armor that shimmered with an ethereal light. Their expressions were a mix of stern authority and disdain as their eyes locked onto Alex. The leader, a towering figure with intricate golden markings on his armor, stepped forward. His gaze flickered to Larea, then to Alex. Who is this human? He demanded, his voice deep and commanding. Alex raised his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm Alex Harper. I found Larea after her crash and saved her. The leader's eyes narrowed. Saved her. His tone was skeptical, almost accusing. Yes, Larea interjected, her voice surprisingly firm. She struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on Alex for support. He saved my life. If not for him, I would not be standing here. The leader's expression darkened, and he exchanged a glance with the others. Do you understand the implications of your actions, human? He asked, his voice laced with both curiosity and threat. I'm starting to. Alex replied, his tone even. But I'm not sure I like the way you're asking. The leader ignored his remark and turned to Larea. You are aware of the consequences, child. The bond is sacred, and now it must be honored. I am aware, Larea replied, her voice steady. And I accept it. Alex frowned, stepping forward. Can someone explain what's going on here? I saved her because she needed help. I didn't realize that came with lifelong consequences. The leader's glowing eyes bore into Alex. Among our people, saving a life at the brink of death creates an unbreakable bond. You have, knowingly or not, pledged yourself to her. To break this bond would dishonor both her and yourself. Alex crossed his arms. And what happens if I say no? The leader's lips curled into a grim smile. Dishonor. Exile. and likely death. Well, that's a great set of options, Alex muttered under his breath. One of the other figures stepped forward, a woman with intricate silver markings on her armor. She seemed less hostile, her expression more curious than anything else. "You seem unprepared for our ways," she said, addressing Alex. "Yet you acted with courage. That is not something to be dismissed lightly." "Thanks, I guess," Alex replied, his voice still wary. "But I'd prefer not to be dragged into something I don't understand." The leader raised a hand, silencing the discussion. "There is no room for debate. The bond has been formed. The ceremony will take place." "What ceremony?" Alex asked, his patience wearing thin. "The rite of unity," Larea explained softly, her hand gripping his arm. "It is a formal acknowledgement of the bond. It will solidify our connection." "And if I refuse?" Alex pressed, his voice low. Larea's gaze dropped, and her voice grew quiet. "Then you will be hunted. By them. By others. They will see you as an outsider who defied our most sacred law." Alex let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. He looked around at the gathered aliens, their expressions a mix of judgment and expectation. Finally, his gaze returned to Larea. Despite the exhaustion and pain etched across her face, there was something else. Hope. "Fine," Alex said at last. "I'll go through with it, but not because I agree with your traditions. I'm doing this for you." Larea's lips parted in surprise, her glowing eyes softening. "Thank you," she whispered. The leader nodded curtly. "Prepare yourselves. The ceremony will begin at dusk." With that, the delegation turned and began setting up an elaborate ritual site, their movements swift and efficient. Alex couldn't help but feel like a pawn in someone else's game, but as he glanced at Larea, he saw something that made the weight of the situation a little easier to bear. For the first time, she looked genuinely at peace. The day passed in a blur as Alex was guided through the customs and expectations of the rite of unity. He learned about the significance of the bond, the cultural weight it carried, and the honor it bestowed. Though skeptical, he couldn't deny the sincerity of Larea's people or the growing connection he felt with her. By the time dusk fell, the ritual site was complete, bathed in soft blue light from bioluminescent plants arranged in intricate patterns. As Alex stood beside Larea in the center of the circle, he realized that while he hadn't chosen this path, he wouldn't walk away from it either. For better or worse, his life had become entwined with hers, and he was determined to see where this journey would take them. Bridging two worlds. The bioluminescent glow of the ceremonial site bathed the valley in a soft, otherworldly light. Alex stood at the center of the circle, feeling both out of place and strangely connected to the moment. Around him, Larea's people chanted in low, melodic tones, their voices blending with the hum of the glowing plants. The rite of unity was unlike anything Alex had ever experienced, a mix of solemnity and surreal beauty. Larea stood beside him, dressed in an intricate ceremonial robe that shimmered like liquid starlight. Despite her weakened state, she held herself with quiet dignity. Her glowing eyes met his, and for a moment, the noise around them seemed to fade. "You look different," Alex said awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "It is tradition. And you look nervous." "That obvious, huh?" Alex replied, trying to laugh off his discomfort. She stepped closer, her voice soft. "You have faced danger for me without hesitation. This ceremony is not a battle. It is simply acknowledgement. Do not fear it." Before Alex could respond, the chanting stopped. The leader of the delegation stepped forward, holding a staff adorned with crystals that pulsed faintly. His imposing figure seemed to loom even larger in the eerie light. "Human Alex Harper," the leader intoned, his voice carrying an almost ceremonial weight. "You have entered into a sacred bond with Larea of our people. To you, of your own will, accept this connection and the responsibilities it entails." Alex glanced at Larea, her gaze steady and expectant. He took a deep breath, his voice firm despite the butterflies in his stomach. I do. The leader nodded, then turned to Lyraya. And you, Lyraya of the Selenari, do you accept this bond and its responsibilities? I do, she replied, her voice clear and unwavering. The leader raised his staff, and the crystals flared brightly, illuminating the entire circle. Then it is done. The bond is recognized by our people and the universe. As the ceremony concluded, the gathered Selenari bowed their heads, murmuring words of blessing. Alex felt an odd sense of relief mixed with trepidation. He wasn't entirely sure what he had signed up for, but at least the immediate tension had lifted. Later, as the ceremony dispersed, Alex and Lyraya found themselves alone near the edge of the valley. The soft glow of the plants reflected in her luminous eyes as she turned to him. I owe you more than I can ever repay, she said quietly. Not just for saving my life, but for honoring this bond. Alex shrugged, leaning against a rock. To be honest, I still don't fully get it. But I know this much. I wasn't going to leave you to face all this alone. She smiled, a rare expression of genuine warmth. That is what makes you different. Many would not have done the same. Alex was about to reply when a sudden noise cut through the calm. A distant rumble, faint but growing louder. He straightened, his hand instinctively moving to his laser pistol. What now? He muttered, scanning the horizon. Lyraya's expression turned grim. It is them. The ones who attacked my ship. Alex swore under his breath. Figures they'd show up now. Do your people have weapons? They do, Lyraya said, already moving toward the delegation's camp. But they are not warriors. Not like you. Well, lucky for you, I am, Alex said, following her. Let's get ready. The attackers arrived swiftly, their ships descending like vultures. Unlike the sleek, ceremonial vessels of Lyraya's people, these were brutish and angular, built for war. As they landed, armed figures emerged, their armor dark and menacing. The Selenari delegation scrambled to prepare defenses, but it was clear they were outmatched. Their weapons were ceremonial at best, more suited for rituals than combat. Alex stepped forward, taking command. All right, listen up. We don't have much time, but we can use this valley to our advantage. Create choke points with those glowing plants. They're dense enough to slow them down. The Selenari hesitated, their gazes shifting to Lyraya. She nodded, her voice firm. Do as he says. Trust him. With her approval, the delegation moved quickly, following Alex's instructions. He positioned them at key points along the valley, using the terrain to funnel the attackers into narrow paths. Meanwhile, he set up traps with the limited resources they had, using his survival gear and a bit of ingenuity. As the first wave of attackers advanced, Alex took the lead, his laser pistol blazing. The Selenari, inspired by his courage, joined the fight, their ceremonial weapons glowing brightly as they fired energy bolts at the enemy. Lyraya, despite her weakened state, stood beside Alex, wielding her pendant's energy to shield their allies. The battle was intense, the attackers relentless, but Alex's strategy paid off. The narrow paths forced the enemy into single-file lines, making them easy targets. One by one, their ships were disabled, their soldiers falling under the combined effort of Alex and the Selenari. When the dust settled, the valley was eerily quiet. The attackers had been defeated, their remaining forces retreating into the night. Alex leaned against a rock, catching his breath. Remind me to put alien wedding crashers on my resume, he joked, wiping sweat from his brow. Lyraya chuckled softly, her expression a mix of exhaustion and gratitude. You fought for us as though you were one of our own. Well, guess I kind of am now, Alex replied, his smirk fading into a genuine smile. She stepped closer, her glowing eyes meeting his. You are more than that. You are my partner, my ally, and my friend. For the first time, Alex felt a sense of belonging he hadn't expected. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building a connection, one that bridged two vastly different worlds. A surprising new beginning. The battle was over, but the valley still bore the scars of the confrontation. Smoke drifted lazily into the twilight sky, and the scent of scorched earth lingered in the air. Alex stood near the edge of the cliff, staring out at the distant horizon. His laser pistol was holstered, but his fingers still twitched with the adrenaline that hadn't quite faded. Behind him, the Selenari delegation worked to repair their damaged ships. They moved with a quiet efficiency, their voices low and measured as they assessed the aftermath. Alex glanced back at them, his gaze eventually landing on Luraya. She was speaking with the leader, her posture proud despite the lingering fatigue in her movements. For the first time since he'd arrived on Xerath, Alex felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from safety. It was the kind that came from purpose. Luraya approached him, her glowing eyes catching the fading light of the day. "You seem lost in thought," she said, her voice soft but steady. Alex shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just trying to figure out what's next. This wasn't exactly how I pictured my week going." "Few journeys unfold as we expect," Luraya replied, stepping closer. "But yours has brought you here, to this moment." He turned to face her fully, his expression thoughtful. "So, what now? Your people are safe, for now. But what about you?" Luraya hesitated, her gaze dropping to the ground. "That depends on you." "Alex Harper." "On me." Alex raised an eyebrow. "How's that?" She looked up, her eyes meeting his. "The bond we share is not one of mere obligation. It is a partnership, yes, but it is also a choice. My people expect us to honor it, but they cannot force your will. If you choose to walk away, I will not stop you." Alex crossed his arms, his brow furrowing. "And if I stay?" Her expression softened. "Then we begin a journey together. Not just as allies, but as something more." The weight of her words settled heavily between them. Alex wasn't sure how to respond. He had spent his life avoiding commitments, moving from one job to the next without tying himself down. Yet here he was, faced with a connection deeper than anything he'd ever known. "Why me?" he asked finally, his voice quieter. "Why put your faith in a human? Someone you barely know?" Luraya stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "Because in the moments that mattered, you chose to fight for someone you could have left behind. You chose compassion over fear. That is rare among any species." Alex let out a dry chuckle. "You sure you're not just projecting?" She smiled, a faint glow lighting her cheeks. "Perhaps. But I believe in what I see." The silence between them was comfortable this time, filled with unspoken understanding. Alex turned back to the horizon, his mind racing. He thought of Earth, of the life he'd left behind. It was familiar, but it had never felt like home. This was different. "I guess I'm not much good at walking away," he said finally, glancing at her with a small smile. Her expression brightened, a rare warmth radiating from her. "Then we will face what comes together." The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. The Selenari worked tirelessly to repair their ships, and Alex helped where he could, using his mechanical skills to bridge the gap between human and alien technology. Despite their initial mistrust, the Selenari began to warm to him, their respect for his bravery growing with each passing day. Luraya stayed by his side, guiding him through their customs and traditions. She showed him the intricacies of their technology, their history, and their way of life. In turn, Alex shared stories of Earth, painting vivid pictures of its vast oceans, bustling cities, and endless skies. Their bond grew deeper, built on a foundation of shared experience and mutual respect. But the peace was not without challenges. Word of the attack spread quickly, and Luraya's people knew that their enemies would not stop. They spoke of leaving Xerath, seeking sanctuary among the stars. Alex was invited to join them, but the decision weighed heavily on him. "You don't have to come," Luraya said one evening as they sat beneath the stars. Your place is on Earth. I would not hold it against you if you returned." Alex shook his head, a wry smile on his face. "Earth hasn't felt like home in a long time. Besides, I've got a feeling you'd get yourself into trouble without me." Loraya laughed softly, her voice like music in the still night. "Perhaps, but trouble seems to follow you as well. Guess we'll have to keep an eye on each other," Alex said, his tone teasing but genuine. When the day came to leave Xerath, Alex stood with Loraya at the helm of her repaired ship. The Selimari leader approached him, his expression still stern but tinged with a hint of respect. "You are an outsider," the leader said, his deep voice echoing in the ship's chamber. "Yet you have proven yourself worthy. Take care of her, human. She is more important than you realize." Alex nodded, his jaw set. "I will. You have my word." As the ship lifted off, Alex felt a strange mixture of excitement and uncertainty. He was leaving behind the familiar and stepping into a life he could never have imagined. But as he looked at Loraya, her gaze steady and filled with trust, he knew one thing for certain: he wasn't alone. The stars stretched out before them, a vast expanse of unknown possibilities. Together, they would face whatever came next, their bond unbreakable, their journey just beginning.